Hello.
Hey guys and girls.
Hello, everybody. Everyone in between.
Yeah, welcome back to another stream. Got
Carlbot,
Carbot, Henry.
nice to see you guys.
Nice to see you. Um, yeah, we got a pretty cool stream today. It's going to be a bit of a continuation of last week's stream where we were talking about Quinly Pro and all the new stuff that's coming down the line. So if you have any questions or suggestions, make sure to always put them in the live chat. We'll be reading it live and answering them. We'll also be talking a bit more about some of the features we didn't get to because that stream went like pretty long.
Yeah, we got like twice as much content as we could actually cover last week.
Yeah,
So
there's like
we're gonna finish that off this week.
yeah, there's gonna be a lot of things coming all at once with with the release of Pro because actually a lot of it was developed like years ago. So
Yeah, we're just
it's
finally
finally
getting it ready for actual customers to use.
yeah. Um, so And in addition to that, we'll be giving an update on the multi-printer hub because the beta testing for that started this week.
Yeah, that's going pretty well.
Yeah, we'll share some results, and yeah, we'll talk about some fast printing, and maybe we'll talk a bit about the Anchor Make printer as well.
Yeah, that's
So
gonna be fun.
yeah, that's the outline for this stream.
Yeah.
So maybe to start, why don't we summarize for those who might have missed the last stream, just for context, what we were talking about, and how that'll ease into this topic this week.
Yeah, so last week we kind of introduced Quinly Pro as the print farm software that'll run your automated print farm as much as possible, essentially without you having to do all that much. So, Mateo, what's one of the cool things about Quinly Pro that would make it really good for print farms?
Uh, there's a lot of really good things that make it good for print farms.
Yeah, just one of them.
Just one of
Something
them.
like I don't know,
Yeah,
having all the files in one place.
yeah. So that's a big one, but it's not just like a central file storage. It's actually it's smarter than that in that not only do you get to store all your files in one place, but we'll talk about it today. Um, you'll have history for those files and you'll be able to track, production of those files, how certain files perform and all of that cool stuff. But yeah, the big one being, whether you're using SD cards, which actually a surprising amount of print farms do,
Yeah,
or whether
sad.
yeah, or whether you're using something like Octofarm, like the file management is actually quite poor and can take up a lot more time than you would expect.
Yeah, yeah. So we've centralized the file system to make that much easier. Now we also have a centralized queue, so one location that you can control all of your printers from, dispatch jobs to uh, one printer, then another printer, all on the same screen.
Yeah.
So saving you all the time that you would otherwise take to switch between tabs or connect to different printers at different times. It's all on one screen.
Yeah. You don't have to think about scheduling or like on a manual print farm, you'll have to think about like whenever you need to print something, you'll be like, oh, which printer is finishing next? Which printer am I going to have to schedule this on next? Or like, how am I going to arrange my parts on the bed so that I get optimal cycles?
Mm.
And, that's a lot of work. And it's a lot of time spent literally micromanaging all of your machines where you could be focusing on, um, designing new products or just less boring, mundane, like very
Yeah.
menial work. Like, yeah, scheduling. I don't know anyone who, yeah, I don't know that many people who really enjoy running a calendar for their printers or like it's either
No, yeah,
it's
people just would rather have prints happen like
yeah.
automatically instead of having to just tell everyone to do it every single time.
Yeah. Nice to see everyone coming in. We've already got a really good question from Henry that he says, would QuinlyVision be integrated into history? So we'll talk a bit about that in detail. So this stream will be about the pro features we didn't get to, and how QuinlyVision works with Quinly. Um, and part of that is, yeah, like it's important to know in your job history how jobs performed, not just whether they were failed or canceled, but like if they fail, how did they fail? Because
Yeah.
that can be important for refining cheat code. So we'll talk about that too. Um, yeah, so you
Carl
can
has a
see
question
which
too.
profiles were used the most. Yeah, so you can see like what G codes. Maybe you have a couple versions of G code and you can see which one's the most successful or which ones print the fastest. So we'll talk about that. I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves here. Um,
Well, we were also talking about just the idea of having one G code file and using the Quinly Pro to adapt that G code file to print in different materials.
mhm.
So instead of having, your PLA G code, same thing for PET same thing for nylon or whatever, you could have just one G code file. And then so in Quinly, you could say, okay, in this um, print, I want, temperature offsets, or maybe I want it to print slower because it's in nylon, or maybe I want it to, um, have a slightly higher flow rate because it's like a flexible TPU and it needs higher flow rate. So having all those offsets built into Quinly makes it so that you only need to slice one file instead of having to reslice like 5 times, one for each material.
Yeah, and so a lot of people might think, oh, that sounds pretty impossible, but there are a lot of cases where even just some simple changes, which, as everything, we plan to start simple and get more complicated, but even simple changes, just like temperature offsets and speed offsets and, flow multipliers can be applied to a G code file to let you print in different colors or slightly
Mm-hmm.
different materials like PLA and ABS. I know I actually use the same slicing profile, except I just change the temperatures and I change a couple of the speeds. So it's
Yeah,
very
turn
doable
off
to,
the fan probably.
yeah, yeah, and that's one of those like kind of simple things that can be automated.
Yeah,
We say like everyone thinks, oh yeah, that's so easy. I just change a couple things in my slicer. But if you're changing all those things all the time, all of these little, we were calling them micro tasks, add up to be a massive,
yeah.
just like time suck, basically.
It's my new favorite word actually, microtask.
Yeah.
Because 3D printing is full of microtasks. I think I went over a whole bunch of them in a list last stream, and we should actually probably clip that and put it on social media. But
Yeah.
like,
There's so many.
yeah, just starting and finishing a print, like there's 20 things you have to do without even thinking about it.
Hmm. So yeah, so if your G code, so we talked about if your G code gets assigned to a printer that has certain color of material in it, um, the G code could be adapted for that color material or for that type of material,
Hmm.
um, automatically. Like you wouldn't have to even think about it. Now, the last thing we talked about just a bit was remote access, and that's the idea that your interface will just be accessible over the internet. So instead of having to set up a VPN or working just on prem, you'll have the ability to go to a website and log in and see your printers from anywhere. And the reason that's important is that a lot of larger operations are looking at having printers distributed across multiple sites.
Yeah.
And so LAN, you know, just a local network does not work when you have multiple sites. And our vision for 3D printing is for decentralized manufacturing. And you can't have decentralized manufacturing if they all have to be plugged into the same router.
Yeah.
So we,
Because you want to be able to control printers in like different cities, different countries. Maybe you have one printer in your grandma's house all the way across the world and you want to print her stuff.
yeah,
There's a lot of different use cases for this, and being able to remotely access printers is kind of the next level. Like once you get your, printer automation set up, you can actually send G-code files, and you don't really need to watch the first layer because you know that your G-code file works. And 3D printers are really repeatable, especially when they're automated and you don't have people touching them all the time.
Yeah, and like actually quite a few of our clients are that we speak to are planning on using printers to manufacture directly like at the end user's location. Like you might want to send spare parts to a frequent client or certain parts. Yeah, but that if you want to know more about all of that, we talked about it in the last stream. This stream is going to be more stuff we didn't get into. But before we go into the rest of the Quinly Pro features, particularly QuinlyVision and Farm Analytics, I'm just going to give an update on the multi-printer hub. So last week we talked about we were going to start a multi-printer hub beta. That has been started for everyone that joined in. We had a really good call on Friday. And so what the multi-printer hub is basically our response to the chip shortage and how expensive and hard it is to get Raspberry Pis and other similar boards. So the idea is that you can use a single device to print to many printers at once.
This meaning you get like 3 printers, maybe 4 printers out of your hub that you were originally just running 1 printer off of.
Yeah.
So it's tripling, quadrupling the value of that.
Yeah.
We actually have a poll on the Discord. How many printers do you think we'll be able to control with the wireless hub? And we don't know the answer to that yet, so that's why we're testing.
I think most people voted for 5, I think.
5? 5 would be pretty cool.
That would be really good. I'm just hoping, my goal is to get 4, but so what I wanted to say was we've started getting the first results in, and yeah, it's been going pretty well. Everyone's been able to get 2. We're splitting the beta up into 4 sections. So at the end of this week, we're going to move on to 3, and not just 3 printers, but the possibility to do 3 different printers. So that's kind of a unique feature of what we're doing is you'll be able to mix and match printers, and the system will be able to handle having different printers connected. So yeah, it's going to be some pretty interesting testing, and we'll talk about how we can track printers later in this stream too, because it's very important for the way that we handle mixed printer farms is unique to Quinly. I don't think you would have seen it in any other software.
Another question from, I guess not really a question, but from Carlbot.
Yeah, I said the automatically adapting G-code is really cool for filaments. Might be even cooler to have the slicer interact directly with Quinly so you don't have to have folders on your computer. Well, what we want to do with the file storage on Quinly is, so that you don't have to have folders on your computer, that you can store the files in Quinly itself. And then not only do you not have like, a million G codes in your downloads folder, but you can actually organize your folder within the Quinly software, like for different production tasks. Maybe, why don't you talk about it? And I'll actually pull up maybe one of our production printers to show people.
Oh, yeah.
Do you know which one might be a good one? 73, I think.
Oh, 73 is offline, I think. Try
is the
like
Benchy one
13 maybe.
Okay.
That one's named Steven.
Okay. Yeah.
Or Tabby. Tabby might be good too. 25.
Okay.
We've named all our printers based on current and past.
Current and past interns.
3DQ. Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, why don't you talk about how you use the files and folders for production?
Yeah. So what we do is when we print parts for our kits, we have like 7 or 8 files that we need to print, and one of those go into each kit. And so what we have is we have folders set up with one of each file. And so what we can do is if we want to print a kit for somebody, we just select the whole folder basically, and then all the files get automatically selected. We can just hit print, and all 7 or 8 of those files go straight into the Quinly queue, and they get automatically printed. So within, is it 1, 2, 3 clicks, you can print an entire assembly of parts all at once.
So here's actually one of the printers on our farm right now. I don't think it's printing. Nope. But this is kind of, this one only prints a couple of products, but this is the hub top and bottom. And so if I need to get like one enclosure for one of our wireless hubs, all I can do is, select the whole folder and actually just add it to the queue. And now, if I hit send, it's going to get picked up by the printer. And I'll actually get like one whole hub at the end of it.
Yeah. So in this case, you did 2 prints with the same number of clicks that it would take to do 1 print. But you could all, like, if there was like 20 things in that folder, you could just click 3 times and you print all 20 parts.
Yeah, like for example, in this one, I've got some production that we do for a client where I store this particular client's files in one folder, and I can, access exactly what I need. If they order one of these and one of these and one of these, I can select them, say how many of each I want, and then just send that off to the queue as well. And then of course the disastrous unsorted folder.
When you go into all files.
Yeah.
But that's why the folders are useful. So you don't have to look at the mess of all your G code. You can actually organize them into folders.
Yeah. So, yeah, before we get too sidetracked on that, definitely, yeah, you don't have to have, as Carl said, you don't have to have files on your computer. And with Pro, the nice thing is that these files will be stored, you'll have the option to store them in the cloud and shared among every printer that's associated with your account. So even in different locations, and actually, speaking of different locations, Henry says, so I would be able to make adjustments to G code that a client is using and start the print, and then QV can let me know how well it goes from his office. So yeah, exactly. Like you could maybe have install a printer at your client's location, test the print on your printer, send the G code over, have visibility of the remote printer, and actually see whether it printed successfully or not.
Yeah, that's the power of QuinlyVision. Like it's kind of the second half of automation, where if you have a printer at a place where you're not going to be there physically, you need some way to know your print's failing. Right? Because prints sometimes fail, no matter what you do, how good you are, sometimes they'll fail. So
yeah,
having that backup is really nice.
And especially if you're going to be like printing for a customer at a remote site, because their environment could be different, so there's more risk of something failing. You guys should broadcast this in podcast format.
3DQ podcast.
Maybe.
Is there live chat in podcasts?
Well, we read the live chat anyway, so they would be able to hear it.
Yeah, right. Interesting idea. I wonder if you can do that with Restream. Maybe.
Yeah, I wonder what platforms would be good for that. We will ask you about this later. Okay, so getting into this week's features, we're going to start with analytics. So maybe the big question is like, I can kind of get analytics already. My slicer tells me how long a print is going to take. I see whether a print fails or not every time I do a print. What kind of analytics do I need? And something that we've discovered when talking to, particularly with people that are just starting out with Quinly, is they often don't realize exactly how, or they don't have insight into exactly how their farm is running, because the amount of data that actually takes to run a print farm efficiently um, would be a lot of manual recording and a lot of manual work. And this is
Mhm.
actually something that I don't know if you remember last last summer we
Okay.
had an intern
Oh
recording
yeah.
production
Yeah.
data all the time, like every day, every morning.
Yes. Took a lot of work.
Yeah. And the reason we did that was so that we knew what data was important, but not everyone can do that. Like it's takes so much time and you can't do that constantly.
Yeah, like we were figuring out how much of the printed parts we had were successful, how many were defects, and how many were like I don't know, canceled or um, unusable for another reason, like wrong material or something.
What the yield rates were, like
Yeah,
success rates, because there were different sizes and shapes of parts.
yeah,
Um, but yeah, like realistically, if you're running farm for production, it's too expensive to hire somebody to do that. The reason we were doing it was for research because we want to build the most important data and analytics into um, Quinly so that it can give you those insights without you having to record anything. So
so
right, oh, go ahead.
you wouldn't have to go and weigh the trash that you
Yeah,
created
right.
because you would be able to tell like, okay, this is how much, these are how many parts that I printed. Quinly would know how many were like QuinlyVision would be able to tell you how many failed, or if you had to abort anything, it would be able to tell you how much filament, at least a good estimate of how much filament was wasted, basically.
Hmm.
Um, Among other things, how much idle time your printers were having. Uh, you know, cycle time is a really important one. So how much time your printer spends heating up and cooling down.
How
Um,
much time is actually spent idling as well?
yeah,
Because you can feel very busy running a print farm, and your printers might not be printing all that much
yeah,
because there's a lot of untracked overhead that goes into, like, if a part fails, you're probably going to have to look at the slicing settings and then reslice it. And all, like, while you're doing that, your printer's not actually doing anything unless you also then spend time to switch it to a different job. But then that's
mhm,
extra time being spent. And there's like a lot of manual time loss when running manual printers that are not immediately clear to a lot of farm operators. I know we talk about this a lot, but it is something that a lot of people come back to us and say, like, when before they started with Quinly, they were doing a batch that was like uh, 8 hours during the day, and then we're setting up a batch to go overnight for like 12 to 16 hours. And they're like, yeah, I'm
yeah,
printing 24/7. But then after they switch to an automated system, they suddenly say, well, I'm using 3 times more filament than I was before. So
yeah,
how are they printing 3 times more material when apparently they were running 24/7 before?
yeah,
And it's because it was more like they were occupied 24/7 rather than actually producing parts 24/7. And the other thing is that with the automation, it becomes more and more important to optimize print speeds. And because you now have this time to work on the actual end product, optimize the slicing and optimizing the design and print speeds, you actually end up with much more output than you usually would have.
yeah. I mean, what we find is like people who say that they're running 24/7, if we actually, talk through the numbers a little bit, we'll actually find that they're actually only printing about 30 to like 70% of their maximum capacity. And like 70% is really, really good. And like only one
Mm-hmm.
person we talked to has actually gotten to 70. But most people are lying around like the 30 to 50% range. And like the point is, Quinly actually puts you over that 90%, uh, maybe even to like, yeah, 95% um, on your printer uptime. And that's going to basically double or even triple your farm capacity. And that's how these people are using 3 times more filament when they are still running 24/7, as they say.
Yeah, Steph brings up a good point. People don't count their overnight printer downtime. Um,
Hmm.
and yeah, that's usually like when I'm at the printers, they're always running. But then, you know, either you're going to have to hire another shift of people to run them overnight,
Yeah,
or you're going to have to spend time during your day to make batches that can work overnight, and you still won't. attain like optimal efficiency. It's just
Yeah.
like empirically you won't, based off of the dozens of print farms that we've spoken to. It's very, very hard to do so because at the end of the day, whenever a print finishes, you need a human there. And even if
Yeah.
you do slice something to be like perfectly the 16 hours you're not working, um, you can only cram so many parts onto a bed. And then at what point are you just printing like slower than you should be to fill out that time?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, that's a good point.
and there is so that brings me to the point that we've been kind of discussing with fast printers and like things like how the Anchor Make is advertising to be really, really quick. The thing is, like, the faster you print on a manual machine, the more often you'll need somebody to go and reset it.
Yeah. It's
And
like the faster you print, the more work you actually have for
yeah,
yourself.
you're creating more work by printing
It's
faster,
like a good problem, but like
kind of.
you can't have an anchor make running overnight because it'll finish halfway through the night and you won't be able to clear the bed because you're asleep.
Yeah, yeah,
So
exactly.
like, an Ender 3 would have done the same part.
And it's pretty interesting. So like people might be running 24/7, but they might actually be printing 2 or 3 times fewer parts than
Yeah.
they actually could be printing.
Yeah,
It's a
because
very
we can
interesting
really
problem.
push the speed of Ender 3s. Like we can go through a kilogram of filament in like 36 hours or less. Can print a benchy in 20 minutes. We'll talk more about that next week, but
Yeah.
um, yeah, there's a lot of speed you can get out of your printers if you have the time to optimize your prints.
Hmm.
Looks like Tabby's in the chat. Hello, Tabby.
Oh, nice to see Tabby.
Good to see Tabby.
You can see where Pro has gone. Tabby used to work with us. She was on the software team, so yeah, this is probably very interesting for her. Cool. Yeah, so we didn't actually get too deep into the Quinly specific stats that we're planning to do in Pro, but um, we kind of gave context on like there's actually so much overhead that you have to keep track of, and a lot of people don't, and then wonder why they're not getting as many prints as they should be. Um, like we were even talking to some people where they estimated that print farms were using their printers only 20 hours per week.
Yeah.
There was like an OEM we were speaking with, and they assumed their highest volume users were 20 to 40 hours a week.
Huh, that's pretty low.
Yeah.
Like even from what we see.
Yeah, which is like you should be printing 168 hours a week, right?
Yeah,
Like that's
ideally.
yeah,
Especially like some of these printers, like it's a lot of cost to get a print farm going. You have to buy a whole bunch of printers. And if you're gonna make those printers kind of like earn themselves back over time,
yeah,
like return the investment, if they're only printing 20 hours a week and you've got 168 hours, like it's gonna take forever for that money to come back if it ever does.
yeah. Which is to say, if you can get your printers running, 90 plus% uptime with something like Quinly, your printers will earn their the ROI is 4 to 8 times faster than if you were just running the printers manually. And this is something a lot of people also don't really think about is what is the ROI on a machine. The more parts you can get out of a machine, the faster it's going to return on investment, and the faster you'll be able to um, scale up your production and scale up your actual business. Not to mention that you're now not spending as much time on overhead. I think a common thing that people think when they see the Quinly kit is like, oh, I could buy another printer uh,
Yeah.
instead of getting 2 Quinly kits, right?
Hmm.
And that'll double my production. But what that actually does is doubles your amount of work. So your cost of labor per print remains the same. And at some point you'll have to, as you increase your print farm, you'll just have to start hiring more people. And that's like not a very efficient way to scale your farm.
Yeah.
But when you have Quinly, it doubles, or actually in a lot of cases, I think the Henry who's in the chat, in his case, he was just doing prototyping, not even production.
Yeah.
It increased his output by 2.5 times. So like if he got two
Yeah.
and a half extra printers, and he was spending less time overall with the machines. So
I mean, in some cases, I think with Jeremy, he was away for 5 days out of 7.
mhm,
So in his case, his production, I think it was more like a 10x because his printer would just run for the 5 days that he was gone, and he would use a whole roll of filament, and he'd come back home, and there's like actually like a whole kilogram of printed parts ready for him instead of just like the 4 that he would have gotten if he just left his print and let it run once.
yeah.
So it can be at least 2 times, and there's like pretty much no limit to how many times more your production could be.
Yeah, so it depends on your objective. Like, is your objective to use printers as a tool to produce the items that you're making or selling or using, or is your job to run the printers and
Hmm.
just try and keep them running? Like, really, like Jeremy is a really good case because his job is sales,
Yeah.
and he was using the printers to do a sales display, and he was severely limited by the amount of time he had to run his machines. But then when he got Quinly, not only was he able to, Quinly was running the machines for him, but he was now able to produce far more parts that, you know, helped him with his main job, which was to make sales displays and to sell the in his case it was power tools and tool bits.
Hmm.
Um, like you shouldn't be working for your printer should be working for you, kind of thing.
Yeah. So let's talk about some of the analytics that come with Quinly Pro. So
Sure.
I think one thing that's important to me is knowing how long a print will take.
Hmm.
And Cura will tell you how long it thinks a print will take. And from my, like a lot of you've probably seen this too, that estimate can be wrong by up to like 2 times
Yeah,
in either direction.
it's so
And
bad.
it was 2 times wrong for me yesterday. So um, what we can do with Quinly Pro is we can actually track the real time that it takes to print your part. So because we're sending the part, so we know how long the part actually took to print, and then that data will be stored with your file. So you know that this G-code file on average takes, let's say, 2 hours to print, and that's like um, a piece of data associated with that G-code file. So every time you print that, you know, okay, on average it takes this long to print. Usually 3D printers should be pretty consistent, but we've actually tracked the same print being printed twice in a row, and it is different.
Yeah.
Just knock my water over. But yeah, also another thing is the cool down time and the heat up time can change too. So you can say this print takes this long to cool down. Maybe the bed's at 110 or something, really hot, and it
Mhm.
takes a lot longer than like your PLA prints that only take like 10 minutes to cool down. But just the fact that we can track the real time that things take and use that for stats means that predictions will be a lot better, and you'll actually be able to sort of schedule things to end at the time that you'd actually expect them to end at, instead of them happening 2 times faster or 2 times slower than you expect.
Yeah.
So using real data, not just predicted data from Cura or slicers.
And something that I found, and I'd like to know if anyone in chat agrees with this, but since I've started using Quinly, because I can trust it to run nonstop, scheduling has actually become a lot less important to me, because
Mhm.
previously I'd be constantly stressing about how am I going to arrange these prints so I can meet a certain deadline.
Or so I can go to sleep.
Yeah, exactly. Like, how do I arrange these prints? That's a better way to say it. How do I arrange these prints around my time so that I can get them printed by a certain date? And
Mhm.
by my time, yeah, I mean like, how do I make it so I don't have to wake up in the middle of the night in order to meet this deadline?
So like one thing I've done is before I had Quinly, I would run all my short prints during the day. So I'd be like, okay, this one's gonna be an hour, this one's gonna be 40 minutes. Okay, I'll just
Mhm.
run all these. And then I have my like 6 hour print that I'll do overnight. But with Quinly, you don't actually care. You can just select them all, hit the print button, and they'll all be there in the morning. It doesn't matter what order they printed.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think again, that's like you're like, oh well, whatever. Like it's easy to decide what order my prints should be in, but when you're doing that across dozens or hundreds or thousands of prints, especially if they're different prints, that is still like a lot of these tiny decisions that are taking up seconds or minutes multiple times per day, dozens of times per week, and eventually adding up to be a lot of your time, like a lot of your brain power just being wasted on these tiny decisions that the automated system can do for you.
Yeah,
Um,
like decision fatigue is a real thing.
yeah,
And if you have to decide what order do I want to print all my parts, that's like mental overhead that you have to deal with. Like, what is it? Some CEOs, right? They just try to make only like two decisions per day. I heard something like that.
that's crazy.
Like, you just have to reduce the number of decisions you make.
Henry says, I don't even, yeah, so Henry's a great example. I don't even schedule my Quinly at the moment. I just check filament every now and then, and it takes zero effort. Like, I think it's hard to see because you're so used to being in this like swamp of like, oh, 3D printing, 3D printing. Oh, that's all you're thinking about is like, how am I getting my printers going? But then once you do switch to an automated system, um, it becomes clear very quickly that you are wasting a lot of time just making these tiny decisions and stressing about hitting deadlines or how to order things. Like it made me, I know when I was running a small design and print thing in school, like it made me not want to take on new projects.
Yeah. Well, it kind of like adds to the whole burnout aspect of 3D printing.
Yeah.
Like I remember there was about 6 months, about a year where I just didn't 3D print anything because I just got tired of it. It was like, oh, there's like a good percent chance it's gonna fail, and like, oh, that's just a lot of effort, and then
Yeah.
deadlines are scary. Just Al's got it here. That overhead can get quite overwhelming, sometimes enough that you simply shut down.
I think actually it's funny, like a lot of the people we talk to that work like on 3D printing software or like hardware design, like at 3D printing companies or at like resellers,
Hmm.
they work in 3D printing, but they don't use 3D printers very much
Yeah.
because I guess they're simply, they use up all their energy doing their actual job and like don't have time to deal with a 3D printer, which is so
Yeah.
sad. Like people in this industry don't use the 3D printers.
Yeah. Well, that's actually something that happened to me as well. Like, after about 6 months of 3DQ, I got my own Quinly at home, and literally like it put the joy back into 3D printing. It was just a lot nicer to use Quinly than my old printer, manually. It just changed the way that um,
Yeah.
printing was. It just made it easier to get print started and not have to worry about scheduling things, because I used to do that. Well, I still actually do prints for people around my neighborhood and Craigslist and stuff. And it makes life a lot easier when you don't have to think about when things are coming up.
Al says, my biggest issue is scheduling prints. When you're juggling multiple orders, as in 40 to 60, it's very difficult to keep things aligned. Yeah, like I at the time, I don't think I can even imagine doing that many orders at once. I think at the time, the most orders I would ever take would maybe 5, just because there was a lot of prototyping and iteration. I mean, it drove me insane to the point that I started developing Quinly for 3D printers to solve that problem.
Yeah.
But it was very stressful, especially if you have other stuff going on. Like if you're printing for your business or, for other people, with maybe within a company, like a lot of people are using printing for jigs and fixtures for a larger manufacturing process. You have all of this external pressure for just delivering the product that you also want to have to make all these decisions around scheduling prints and and dealing with the machines themselves.
Yeah.
So
So I think having that kind of takes away a variable in your decision making. You no longer kind of need to prioritize things in terms of print time. You have to prioritize them only on which thing do you want to get printed first.
mhm.
So if this needs to be first, you put it in the front of the queue, and then the next thing, then the next thing. You don't need to also optimize for, okay, I need this thing first, but it's a short print, so I'm
Yeah.
gonna put this short print right in front so then I can do the long print overnight. It's that multivariable problem now turns into like a single variable problem, and it makes it a lot easier to schedule prints when you don't need to worry about your print times.
This, I just wanted to highlight this comment from Al again. It's taken him over 4 months to catch up and recover from the Christmas season. There are actually a couple of Etsy store owners that I've talked to, uh, some with Quinly, some without, and they had like a very similar, I guess they told me very similar things where like from Black Friday to Christmas would basically give them a backlog that was 3 or 4 months long.
Yeah.
And what was really cool to hear is one of one of our guys that runs a Quinly farm, Quinly, I think he has 6 Quinly for Prussias. He said that he was able to get through his Christmas order rush in the 2 weeks after Christmas
Nice.
because all he did was just throw all the parts into the queue and let the printers run for 2 weeks and do
Yeah.
all that work for him for 2 weeks without all of the mental overhead of dealing with the order, like associating orders with printers and dealing with scheduling orders and which ones go out first because he knew they'd all be done in a short period of time. It's if your delivery time is 3 months, then you have to think about how am I going to deliver to the first customers first. But if your delivery time, if you know you're going to go through your backlog in 2 weeks, that becomes less important because everyone's going to get it in 2 weeks and not have to wait months to get their orders. So it was really cool to hear from him. Like I think he said he printed something like 800 parts in those 2 weeks,
Yeah.
and that was 300 or 400 orders, that backlog that he just went through. He said like before he installed Quinly, his delivery time on Etsy was something like a month or 2 months
Oh, damn.
during
That's
normal
really long.
season. Yeah, because he had so much demand.
Well, it's like, I think he figured out how to use Quinly. You just get your files, chuck them in the queue, and pick them up when they're done.
This is another interesting point. I find myself having to reslice for almost every order because I find myself trying to place an entire order on a bed, so every time it's a custom print. And now that is like another thing where people are trying to batch prints to optimize, to either make it easier to track parts or optimize for print time. Like,
With Quinly, you don't need to batch parts though. You could just have them all separate, and you could create like a folder structure where you can just select all the parts you want and print them one at a time.
yeah, I'll go back to this. I mean, Al has Quinly on
Sidewinders,
he's
right?
used it, yeah. But you can just, if you have an order, you can make a folder for it and just send it. And the thing that we're adding in Quinly Pro that this actually takes us into job history pretty well, is that you might, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I assume that you would be putting entire jobs on one print bed so that you can keep track of that job. Something that we're adding for Quinly Pro is we're calling it kind of well, there's job history and then there's also printer fingerprinting. So what those two do together is that you'll be able to go through your history of jobs and actually see where and when it was printed on what printer. And we've had to make this system robust to you like shutting off machines and moving them around in your farm. But you won't have to do that thing where all the jobs to a certain customer have to go on one build plate. You could queue them all up and then go in your history and see, okay, here's where this job came off, here's where this job came off. See whether they were actually, whether all pieces of that job were finished. And then again, that's like saving you time. You don't have to do custom slicing for every single customer job, because that was actually an issue, a similar issue that the Fuchsia farm had, which was those 300 or 400 orders. Um, they every single part was a custom part and had to be designed and sliced custom. Um, but because of the queue system, it didn't really matter to them because they would just design, slice, and then throw it into the queue and just allow it to get printed. Now with the new functionality we're adding, you'll be able to go through, track the orders, and actually see where where the parts of that order got printed.
Oh, actually, you should probably cancel the print that's on Steven. I think it's got nylon loaded in right now.
It has nylon.
Yeah, it's probably not doing so well.
Oh yeah. I'll clear
It's
that.
at 225 font.
Yeah, let me cancel this job too.
I just realized, like, oh yeah,
Yeah.
that one's probably not good.
Okay.
See, if we had Quinly Pro on this printer, we would know that
We
there's
would know that
nylon.
there was nylon inside, yeah, for sure.
So just a question from CRS1: what extraneous sensors and upgrades do you consider critical for success with the Ender printers?
That's
So
a
the
good
one
point.
is BL Touch is, I would say, basically essential.
Or a leveling sensor,
Or some sort of leveling sensor, yeah.
because we don't use BL Touch.
No, we have inductive probes, but I think BL Touch makes the most sense for as much of a plug and play option. Just because over time you want to make sure that your beds stay level, and even if the bed slowly shifts over time for whatever reason, you'll still get perfect first layers with that BL Touch. And I think another upgrade that goes along with that is upgrading your bed springs to the yellow stiff springs.
Yeah.
That really helps keep your beds staying in the same level for a lot longer. So actually in the print farm that we have, we don't really level beds more than like once a month or two.
Yeah.
Just because the beds really don't shift because of those yellow springs. So I think those are the two main ones that I would recommend.
Probably also, when you're running automated, part speed becomes a lot more important, because now you're no longer bottlenecked by you having to be there when the print finishes.
Mhm.
Like part speed, it's like a multiplier effect. If think about it this way, like if you had let's say 8-hour parts,
Yeah.
and you would be able to get to that printer, and let's say you are available to manage your printer around 3 or 4 times a day.
Mhm.
Let's say 4 times a day you could go to your printer and reset it, and you had 8-hour parts. Well, so if you had an 8-hour part, you'd be resetting it 3 times a day.
Yeah.
So it makes sense to try and optimize your part for 6 hours, so that every time you have time, 4 times a day, you'd be able to reset it. And so you would spend time getting that 8-hour part down to 6 hours, and you would be utilizing like your 4 kind of printer maintenance times per day, right? Or part reset times per day. But then there's not really much incentive to go below 6 hours, because if you went to 5 hours, then the printer would be sitting idle for 1 hour waiting for you to come and reset it every time. However, with Quinly, the printer and the build plate are self-cleaning and self-resetting an unlimited amount of times per day. So it makes sense to bring those 8-hour parts as low as they can go. And that's something that we've done on our system. We had parts that were initially 2 hours and 45 minutes. And by adjusting the design and the slicing, we brought them down all the way to 45 minutes. So, that's not that useful if you're running manually, because now you'd be like, oh, I have to run to the machine every 45 minutes. But with Quinly, that's a really, really good thing, because you don't have to run to the machine every 45 minutes, and you're still getting a part every 45 minutes. So
So are you recommending getting a high flow hot end?
I'm recommending a different hot end. Yeah.
Yeah. I was like, okay, he's
Where's
going
this
this way.
going? Yeah.
Yeah. So something like with the more powerful heater, or I don't know, do those micro Swiss hot ends have better
They're
flow?
good actually, yeah.
Because, or even getting those CHT nozzles. I know some people in the chat have a CHT nozzle. I still need to get mine, but maybe they can tell us the pros and cons of CHT, because I know there's probably both.
Okay, there's a correction.
People love silicone spacers
Silicone
now.
spacers.
You know what? I've never tried them. I bet you they are probably better than
They're
those
probably better,
springs.
yeah. We've just never had to change the springs.
Yeah, yeah. So if you can easily get silicone spacers, I'd say try those first. Uh, yeah, Team Silicone Spacers in the chat.
Um, okay, let's see what there were actually a lot of comments about job history and tracking jobs. So these are
Oh, this
actually,
goes right into what we're going to
yeah.
talk about.
So for other job history, Al's saying, can we populate that into an Excel file for tracking, or is that necessary? The idea is that I think we'll give you the option to export, and there's actually a way to export certain job history already. But for Pro, the idea is that the information you need will be displayed for you in the UI. And yeah, I don't see why we couldn't do like a CSV download or something so that you can run your own analytics on the data. I think that'd be very easy to do and could provide a lot of value.
The main idea, though, is that we want to display all the information that you'd want to see anyway.
Yeah.
So if everyone's wanting to download their CSV data so that they could run one kind of analysis, we would just build that into Quinly.
Yeah.
So if you're needing any sort of specific stats from your print farm, let us know, because we want to provide all the useful information directly within Quinly.
Yeah, like for example, tracing parts by tag or order number or name, etc. The way I would do it right now is I would just have create a new folder, because essentially a folder is a tag for a file. I'll switch back to the web view actually, and show you what I mean. Like you have all your files here, and let's say like these Zitty
QuinlyVision tests.
QuinlyVision tests, right, are for a particular customer. What I would do is I would create a folder like order, I don't know, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then I would either, upload the G code directly into that folder or add it to that folder. And the cool thing that you can do with folders right now as well is files can actually be in multiple folders at the same time. So let's say you had, another order 67890, and they ordered this product and this product, but not this one. You could use that, move it into this folder. And now the cool thing is like
you need to check the box to keep them in the same
folder.
folder.
Forgot to check the. Here we go. So now you have all 3 in this first order, and you have just the 2 in the next one. And so this is one method of tagging. I think we'll probably introduce maybe some custom tagging. Like we were talking about doing custom tagging for printers themselves, but I think it makes sense to do it with G code as well. And something that you can search. But at the moment, actually, the way that we've implemented folders works very similar to tags, because you can have multiple folders or multiple tags for a particular G code, and then you can sort by those tags. So this G code is tagged with order 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and order 67890. But yeah, I would love to hear more feedback about this, because yeah, that's what we're looking for.
Yeah, I can see tags being useful if you have like 40 orders.
Yeah,
you don't want to have 40 folders.
Yeah, exactly. You probably want a search function.
Which is probably why Al was asking. So it seems like some people are testing CHT. So machine creators, ooze is a con. to CHT. I guess retraction doesn't work so well when there's like a wedge splitting your filament, so that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Henry, I want to hear about your CHT nozzle results with copper heater, because that seems like a really good combo for heat transfer, because copper's just that good.
Going into what Henry was saying about the folders, because Henry runs a print farm and prints a lot for customers. He said he had the exact same issue tracking files and ended up attaching an identifier that is the thickness of the first layer straight into the design. Oh, interesting. However, I'm sure there are better ways to do it. So he's actually tagging the physical parts, kind of like how we were doing those serial numbers.
Yeah, so
That
he's
makes
actually
sense.
embedding text into a file.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
Hmm.
There's a lot of chat going on.
Yeah. Al's saying have Quinly Pro notify me when Jones' order is done, auto-populated with locations. Yeah. So that's what we plan to do in Quinly Pro is in your job history when you click, like when maybe a group of jobs gets finished, maybe we can add that, or when jobs with a certain tag are finished. That'd be interesting. Notify you and then tell you which printers they have come off of. I think,
Yeah, if you multiple upload, or if you send a whole bunch of jobs at once, I think it would be
yeah,
nice to notify you when all of those have been finished.
yeah. But I think we actually have something like that planned in our backlog where you can do groups of prints as a single job
Mm-hmm.
file. Um, so yeah, Al, that might be closer than you think. Exporting to Prometheus and making printer Grafana dashboards. We've been looking at Grafana. I would be interested to hear your thoughts on it. Maybe interesting how to explain jobs, how to manage folders as jobs are completed. I do agree with Al that the folders can get a bit unwieldy with too many orders, but you can just delete the folder and it's not going to delete your files in that folder. Like your files will still be in your inventory here. You can see all three of them are still here. So it's more like deleting a tag. So if your order was complete and you didn't want it anymore, you could delete that. But in Quinly Pro, so you see like these files are still here. You actually have to delete the files themselves to get rid of them. But with Quinly Pro, we'll add something more robust, like an actual proper jobs history. So you could go in here, um, click on jobs that were printed and see where they were printed at. Order tracking without having to move duplicate files would be great. Yeah, so that's exactly how the job history would work. It would just be based on what you've sent to the printer. Oh, was I not showing? Yeah, I was not showing.
Oh no.
Sorry, I'll show you again very quickly. So I was just saying you can also like delete folders as the orders are completed. So like let's say you had this order and you printed everything, you could just delete it.
And your files still remain in the all files folder.
Yeah, your files are still here. You have to delete the files themselves to get rid of them.
So we don't yet have subfolders. Henry's asking if you can have folders within folders.
No, not yet. Um, but yeah, going back to Al's point, I think with Quinly Pro, what we'll be doing is more like just tracking jobs based on how you submitted them so that there's no manual step. But you can use folders to track jobs right now. Um,
Yeah, shall we move on to
Reliability.
Reliability.
Oh, we didn't talk about some of the other stuff that would come with trucks. I'll just quickly
Yeah,
go
this is
over.
good stuff actually. Let's talk about it.
Yeah. So in addition to knowing where um, prints happened, like what printer it went on, um, there's also going to be history for certain G codes. So like if you're running a shop and need to print um, one G code many times for different clients, associating history with a particular G code will be important, especially with when we add QuinlyVision, because you can see, do certain G codes experience a certain type of fail more often. And the other thing that we're kind of thinking about is like, if you make a fix to that G code, you can upload it as like an iteration or a new version of the same print. And
Right.
so you could maybe track how this new iteration performs compared to the old one.
So there'd be something connecting the two G code files you created.
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah.
That's the idea, at least. I still have to think about how that best to do that, but the idea being that you can make changes to your G code and it will actually, you can see the improvement or unimprovement
Yeah.
if when you make those changes, which is really important, especially when you're doing like optimization for speed, because then you could have, like, you could watch how you might have started with a 2 hour G code and brought it down to like 1 hour or 30 minutes or whatever.
Yeah, right. So you could figure out how often your part is failing, and then once you've got it so that it doesn't fail ever, or like within any reasonable amount, you can figure out how optimized your part is.
Yeah. Or maybe even like consider trade-offs where when this G code was at 2 hours, your yield rate was like 99%, but when you brought it
Right.
down to 1 hour, the print time was halved, but your yield rate also dropped to 80%. And then
Right.
be like, well, 80% good parts at 1 hour still means that I'm getting more good parts than I was at 2 hours
Right.
um, per day or per week. And yeah, I don't know. That might be something interesting to track. So like, as you change your G code, does the failure profile change?
So also another thing should be worth noting is you can access your webcam to take a picture of your print as it's finished. Um, and so you'll get kind of like a still image of your picture of your print after it's done.
Mm-hmm.
So you'll be able to have, like, every print will have a associated picture with it, so you can kind of see a visual history of your prints, not just like the file names and how long they took.
Yeah.
And one thing we were thinking about is also, like, depending on how much storage space you have on your SD card or in the cloud, you could store like recent time lapses, and you could like save them, or just let them get deleted after 30 days or whatever. But an automatic time lapse option could be really nice, just maybe for troubleshooting a print, if or if you want to like scroll through to find out what happened 1 hour in, you could at least do that. Yeah, that'll integrate with QuinlyVision as well.
Yeah. And then the other thing that's interesting is instead of doing G code tracking, doing printer-based tracking. So like look at whether certain printers are performing notably worse than others in your farm, especially if you're sending like the same G code to two different machines, but one has a worse yield rate. That can tell you, and depending on what the type of fail is, it can actually tell you like there might be this specific issue wrong with your machine. Like this machine is suffering from under extrusion. Maybe your hot end fan is not working properly, and you're getting heat creep on this one because it's printing perfectly fine on this other machine. So again, it's like that kind of stuff that usually you have to be present in the farm, looking at your printers, manually tracking performance of printers. Like all of that with Quinly Pro is going to end up being automated, so that, again, really your main goal is just to design better parts, and Quinly can take care of actually logging all of this data, giving you summarized reports of the data, and telling you, you know, what it can't fix, and telling you like very precisely what any issues that come up in your farm.
Yeah.
Yeah, failure counter, both printer based and G code based would be a great addition. Yeah, exactly. So, uh, is it wrong? It lets you distinguish, is it an issue with the printer hardware, or is it an issue with the slicing? And for a lot of people, that is a hard distinction to make. Um, because like if you ever go and fix my print or anything, you'll see like most people assume it's a hardware failure.
Yeah.
But what we found is
It's usually slicing.
usually slicing.
It's like level your bed and calibrate E steps. All your problems will be solved.
Yeah.
Like,
No, there's
not
no
really.
way.
Not
No.
really.
But like,
Level the bed is actually usually the problem. But
Yeah.
like it's usually something slicing related, which would actually fix the problem, the root cause of the problem.
yeah. But with this system, we can objectively tell, is it a printer issue or is it a G code issue? Because
Yeah.
we know, is the G code failing across all printers, or is it failing across one printer? And there's no other software out there that can actually that does that type of analysis, because it depends on the farm being automated and all of these processes being automated. So it builds on a lot of stuff that we've been working on for the last couple of years.
Yeah, even in this print farm here, there's printers that I just know that they're kind of good, and there's other printers that I know are kind of bad, and I just use the good ones.
Yeah.
But it'd be really nice for someone who's not intimately familiar with every printer on their farm to be looking at a glance like, okay, just like these ones are in good condition, this one fails a lot, don't use it, or check
Yeah.
it out, maintain it, something.
Well, like when I come in and need to print something, I always ask you like which printers are good
Yeah,
to this week. Like which ones can I print on?
yeah,
But yeah, like if I could just look at a screen and maybe even have the screen say these ones are failing more often, don't send it to these. Like then I don't have to bother Steven. Even if it's like easy, it seems easy to just bug Steven and be like, which printers can I print on? But Steven has to track that in his brain
yeah,
and has to watch the printers like all day, every day to know which ones are good and bad.
yeah. So that, like, you don't need to have that mental overload if you have Quinly Pro. You don't need to be intimately familiar with your printers.
This is a really great idea that Henry brings up.
Mhm.
I think it would actually be good for job history too. Could you do a rolling time lapse so that you have like a few minutes of footage around where the failure happened?
Yeah. Well, I think that's our deal with the 3D and scan is when it detects the fail, it'll actually pause the print, do the 3D scan by
Yeah.
moving the bed back and forth, and then either pause the print or resume the print based on what you've chosen as your failure response. But that sort of idea where QuinlyVision will give you a compressed view of just the point at which the failure has happened so that you can much more easily identify the problem. Definitely something that we're going to do with QuinlyVision.
Yeah, I like the idea of the clip. It's like a Twitch clip of the fail.
Yeah. Yeah, rolling average is something that we're going to use actually in quite a lot of analytics.
Yeah.
Like for example, tracking the cooldown time of your prints. It doesn't make sense to use cooldown times that were taken 6 months ago in the dead of winter, because maybe now your ambient temperature in your room has changed. So you want to,
Yeah.
we're only going to take like the past week or the past 2 weeks of printing into account there.
And we've actually done some like manual analysis of data and seen that like yeah, different months result in different cooldown and heat up time performance during like in the print farm. So that could be very important to know. Maybe maybe you have heating. Oh, even like there was, remember we had that problem where the heating was kicking on during the weekends
Yeah.
because we had just moved in. We didn't know that the heaters were set
Yeah.
for the weekends, but you could kind of see that on some of the data that Carlo pulled.
Yeah, another one was when I ran a time lapse with, actually it's on our YouTube channel, but the time lapse of all the printers printing a bunch of parts at the same time. I actually closed the door to the printer room thinking it would be good for like keeping the lighting consistent. But then the printer room slowly warmed up over time because there was no like fans moving air out. And you could actually see that the cool down time slowly increased over the course of the night, because the room was warming up. It was
Yeah.
taking longer to cool down.
So even stuff like that, like discovering this, and this is like very meta farm analysis. Like it's
Yeah,
very far from the printer itself. Like this is actually a facility issue. Um, but you can get that kind of data and be notified of that kind of data right away. Like we discovered this by manually collecting and analyzing data, and we discovered it like 6 months after it happened.
yeah,
But we could maybe like if for some reason our cooldown times were 5 minutes higher than average, we could totally send out a notification and be like, hey, you might want to check the that your building's heating is not turned on or something like that.
hmm
Um, okay, there are a lot of more comments, but I think that's pretty much it for job history. Um, yeah, I was saying even 30 seconds before and after the fail would be enough. Uh,
yeah,
yeah, time lapse for failure capture. Yeah, exactly. Basically, when something, I think when QuinlyVision hits the threshold, it will save a clip.
With AH in chat, welcome.
Welcome. Just going through stuff you can expect to see in Quinly Pro. Okay, why don't we talk about reliability, since actually Al's also mentioning that he's finding he has to do leveling and ABL as climate changes.
Yeah. So point of reliability is making sure things work as much as possible, the way that you expect it to. So we're trying to increase the number of print successes, reduce the number of fails, that kind of thing. And we believe that having an automated print farm is one of the best ways to improve your reliability, because you take a lot of human stuff out of the equation. Whenever humans do stuff, we don't do it perfectly each time. Um, we're not very repeatable either. Like having to level a bed, we're all gonna level a bed differently. I level beds differently than Mateo.
Yeah.
And if you let the machine remove the parts, you know, the machine's not gonna like crank on the bed or like whack it with a scraper or hit it with a hammer. It's just gonna like the part's gonna nicely slide off. You guys that have Quinly know that the parts just fall off. So, when the automatic removal removes a part, the bed is not gonna like change level in any significant way. Um, so you'll find that like having to manually re-level your bed won't uh, like you won't need to do that nearly as often, if at all. Like I haven't leveled my bed in months.
Yeah, I should, and another part on the bed and having everything be software controlled is the fact that we developed this bed specifically to be self-cleaning and to be resettable into like a very consistent state. And so what I mean by that is if you're using something like hairspray or painter's tape, every time you apply it fresh, it's going to be slightly different because hairspray you do by hand. You might not get the exact same coating every time. Or with painter's tape, you might not get the alignment exactly the same every single time, or it can, some people don't do it with every print. They might do it every couple prints, and so it
Yeah.
wears unpredictably. And this is all fine if you are going to the printer after every print, but it's not acceptable for production because it's just so much variability that is hard to predict. Not to mention that if you are refreshing the bed every single print, that is time that you are spending on the printer and time that the printer is not printing.
It's a micro task.
Another micro task. You might be like, oh, well, it takes me 2 minutes. But it's like, do you really want to be, first of all, it doesn't take 2 minutes,
Yeah.
but like, do you want to be running to your printer every hour or two to do this like tiny 2 minute thing when you can just get rid of it? And so, yeah, it ends up actually wasting or really clogging up a lot of the um, efficiency of a print farm because printers are really good at printing, but then everything around it is really inefficient, and
Hmm.
that's why we've developed all these tools and this hardware to try and solve the issue of everything that happens around your print as well. Um, so
Yeah,
yeah,
AH says we have to re-level the Ender 3 way too often. Is this where the CR Touch comes in handy? Yeah. Uh, any sort of auto leveling system is like it multiplies the effectiveness of Quinly basically because you don't need to level your bed anymore.
hmm,
And if you do, as Al says, maybe 3 or 4 months in between. Um, and that's only maybe if you like move your printer or you like you know, do something like an upgrade to it.
yeah. I
They don't
find
need leveling really. Silicone spacers are now the new cool thing too, by the way. So um, if you check back in chat, if you can scroll back, everyone was really recommending getting silicone spacers for the Ender because it makes the bed stay level. It doesn't change every print.
yeah, we definitely recommend auto bed leveling and replacing the springs with something like silicone spacers. Um,
Yeah, and Alice is saying I don't need to clean my bed, and that's why vapor exists. So you don't need to do any cleaning uh,
yeah,
before or after your print.
don't have to spend money on cleaning products as well. Steph was mentioning to me,
Right? Yeah.
someone she spoke to was spending like probably hundreds of dollars on acetone every month to keep their print
It's a
running.
lot of
I
acetone.
think, well, there's a
Because
gallon.
it's not cheap stuff. I had to buy like
No, it's not cheap.
acetone once, and it was like $20 for like a
The
thing
small, yeah. And I think she said they were using like a gallon of one.
for a print farm. Yeah, I guess
That
so.
would make sense.
Yeah.
And they were cleaning it every because there's a risk, like you can go on like PEI beds and hairspray and all of that stuff. You can skip cleaning it, but then you accept the risk that it's not the same as it was before, and there's a chance that it might fail in a way that you weren't expecting.
Yeah.
If you're running one printer and it's on your desk next to you and you're watching it constantly, that's okay. But if you are busy and want to be printing while you're away, then that can become a real problem. And that's where stuff like QuinlyVision, even if you don't have an automated system, QuinlyVision can come in really handy because it will see whether something's going wrong, and so you can uh, just quickly start a print and walk away.
Like on your first layer, it'll tell you if it's not sticking.
Yeah, like literally when it's doing the skirt perimeter,
Yeah.
it can detect if there are issues with that.
The classic thing where your nozzle like puts filament and then it immediately sticks to the nozzle and like peels up.
Yeah.
And you're like, why? Why is this happening? The solution to that is to print hotter and slower,
Yes.
as
Um,
is always my advice.
and something where, and we'll talk about this in a second, but something we're kind of using as a slogan for QuinlyVision is 5-second fail detection. So if a fail starts happening, our goal with QuinlyVision is to detect it within 5 seconds of it happening. That way, nothing bad is going to happen to your printer. It detects it immediately so that you can get back to the machine and resolve the fail. And in some cases, even maybe recover from fails. That we'll talk about that though in a second.
Yeah, 5 seconds. That is fast.
That's what we're gonna. That's our goal. And
Yeah.
actually, there are some that are faster than 5 seconds, but I don't want to skip over this next section.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, but the reliability of such an automated system, just to close out the point, is if you're going to scale your print farm, you need the printers to be very reliable, and that's something that Quinly can provide because it can give you the data you need to make your machines run better, and Quinly itself is designed to work in a reliable and repeatable way. That way you don't have to think about or worry about your printer like all times of day and night, which I remember having to do when I ran my farm. Yeah, it was bad.
I guess we have a question from Henry. Would you say a touch-based or an induction-based sensor is more reliable? I have always used induction. So I think induction might be more reliable just because it has no moving parts.
Yeah.
But in terms of ease of use and actually, yeah, like calibrating it, I think BL Touch is actually a better choice, unless you really know what you're doing. Just because it probes the surface of the bed, not the underlying aluminum. Um, and in some cases, like for the sidewinders that don't have aluminum, or maybe they do, but it's like a heater, it might just be better to probe the direct surface of the glass
Yeah.
rather than have to probe through the glass and detect like the PCB traces or whatever they have under there.
It actually doesn't work very well with that.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's copper,
Yeah.
and also the traces are not consistent. And if the heater is on, the inductance
Then you
will
have
be
like
different.
currents flowing and magnetic fields
It's not
generating.
good. It's really not good.
Yeah.
So yeah, my opinion is that I like inductive better. And we work really hard to make the vapor bed like consistent thickness across the whole bed.
Mhm.
So it is okay if you probe through it to the aluminum underneath, but if your printer doesn't have aluminum, as Steven said, like it's not going to work. The other thing is that BL Touch now, most main boards have a BL Touch port, whereas they don't have a port for the inductive probe. So yeah, if you're just looking to put something across all your machines, BL Touch is probably way easier. You just have to consider maybe that it will wear and break down slightly more often.
Yeah.
Like the inductive probes we have are what, 3 years old now?
Yeah, the ones we've had them since we need to upgrade all of them because we used to have I think capacitive probes and those weren't as good. But once we upgraded to these inductive probes, like these are the really thick M18 threads, we haven't had to replace a single one, I think.
There was one that broke due to the wire broke.
Yeah, and that's like a wire strain thing.
That was wire strain.
So the probe won't break, the wire might. But that's, I guess, as good as you can get because the BL Touch wires will also have the same issue if you don't strain relief them properly.
Yeah, Kevin's saying Touch covers all types of beds. And yeah, it's like the best kind of one size fits all solution. I agree. Yeah, not too much point in going much fancier than Touch. Like inductive is really nice, but I don't know. BL Touches last forever too. You just have to be careful with them.
What I'd say is just print a really thick first layer, and even if you don't get perfect mesh from your BL Touch or inductive probe, if your first layer is thick enough, it really doesn't matter. So I print my first layers are like 0.4 millimeters to 0.6 millimeters.
Really? That's so high.
Yeah, on a 0.4 sometimes I'll do like 0.3.
That's what I do.
But yeah, I'll go up to 0.6 on the 0.8 nozzle. Because you can even do it on like a manual level bed, and it'll stick like that for a while.
Yeah, inductive also has a problem of like the sensor throw. So the ones we have are 8 millimeter, but I know some of the, even like the Prusa inductive sensors, the one they originally shipped with are like 1 millimeter.
Oh yeah.
So you can't apply anything on top of the steel plate.
Yeah, like some of them you basically have to like readjust the Z offset.
Yeah.
With some of the Prusa probes to make it work through the vapor bed.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's what some people do is like the zip tie method that they tell you to do. But yeah, if you put your probe too high, then it might not sense through.
Oh, here's a good testimonial. Al has BL Touch sensors that are 6 or 7 years old. So.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
I didn't actually know that they were 6 or 7 years old. Maybe I'm old.
They were launched a very long time ago. Yeah, the genuine BL Touch is very old. But I
guess it's the clones. That's
yeah. I think Ender 3 just
problem.
made them, like Creality made them popular.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move on to the next one. So another thing that you'll get with Quinly Pro, which everyone who uses Quinly already gets, but is support. So if you're using open source software, support can be very difficult, and usually if you're not like a programmer or familiar with software development, it can be very hard to fix issues that come up.
especially complicated ones when you ask a question and no one wants to help you because it's such a hard question to answer.
Yeah.
I've seen some of those like unanswered questions on like Fix My Print just because they're so hard to answer, but it actually
Yeah.
matters to us to solve your problem. So we will solve your problem. Even if it's a hard question, we'll answer it.
Yeah. Like there are some people that I've gotten on troubleshooting calls with and like remote desktop, like remoted in to work with them to find the solution to like some very, very specific issue that would probably only ever affect them.
Yeah.
But it's important for us to make sure that your printers are always running and that you can rely on such a system. There was someone I was talking to, and I think I mentioned this last week too, where they were using Octofarm and oh no, just Octoprint, and there was an issue with the Prusa Mini filament out sensor,
Right.
and that issue did not get resolved for an entire year because in the beginning there simply weren't enough people with that problem that were also developers to fix it.
Right.
But because it was for a specific printer model, you know, the devs for Octoprint have no obligation to support that specific printer model, and so there's not really an incentive to fix that for a long time.
Yeah.
And what I find interesting too, someone I talked to mentioned that they were looking at hiring developers to take the pieces of solutions that are out there and customize it to their print farm. And yes, you get an in-house solution, but that takes a long time to do. And hiring devs for a custom solution for your print farm is going to be far more expensive. And the scope of that solution is going to be far narrower than if you have a platform like Quinly, which is supporting, millions of print hours per year.
Yeah. I was talking to Steph about this, where like way back in the day before there were like software for things, companies would all have their own version of like inventory software. And there was no like universal inventory software out there. And they'd all come up with their own like mishmash solutions for it. Until like one day someone decides to make an inventory software that works on every system, and then everyone just uses that because why bother making your own in-house one when you just can use what's been created by people that know what they're doing.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what we're doing here. We're trying to make like a print farm software that works for every print farm using automated printers.
Yeah.
So instead of having to come up with your own, try to come up with your own automatic part release, come up with your own queue system, come up with your own print monitoring and unique identification, firmware, all that. Just it's fine. We got it. That's why we're developing Quinly Pro.
And actually, another thing to mention too is if you're rolling your own solution for a farm, you are, and this is interesting too, talking about the issues farms hit as they're growing. A lot of farms hit the same issues, but it's usually like there's one problem hidden behind another, hidden behind another.
Yeah.
And as you're expanding your farm, you're going to have to keep calling that dev back to come and solve this next problem that comes up and this next problem that comes up. Whereas if you're using a software platform like Quinly, for example, we are in constant communication with all of these print farms that are at different stages of growth and different, like many different use cases, so that a lot of the problems that do come up are being solved before you even encounter them. And I think that's something very important to keep in mind. Like with the betas and with everything, it's definitely a community effort where we try to talk to as many people as possible before designing something or before supporting a new machine, and working with everyone to uncover as many problems as we can so that so that you don't end up encountering that problem yourself.
Yeah.
When someone emails us about a problem and we fix it, it's not just fixing the problem for them, it's actually potentially fixing the problem for hundreds of other printers and people. So that's something very important to keep in mind, like versus rolling your own solution. Because again, if you're rolling your own solution, all of your time or resources is going to be consumed by trying to get that solution to work.
Yeah, especially if you like develop a solution along a certain path, and then you realize, oh, I should have actually gone this way like two
Yeah.
months ago. Then all of the work that you've done, you have to like rework your code and you have to backtrack just to go along your different path.
Mhm.
Whereas like, yeah, with Quinly, we've already kind of tried a bunch of paths and we're already on the right one
We've
because
done that, like we do that constantly.
yeah,
Like
like
even
this is our third automated print farm. We know what we're doing now.
yeah, yeah, exactly.
So
This is the third one we have, and then we work with like dozens more that
yeah,
are using the same system we are. So yeah, like it, the software is supporting, well, it's probably more than that now, but like 5 million print hours per year.
yeah,
There's no chance that um, software that you're rolling in-house is going to be able to have that much experience behind it. Like it's very difficult to get to that point. And
mhm,
so it makes sense, like, because we're here to listen to what you need. And that's why we have open feature request forms. And that's why we do such intensive betas, um, trying to get as many community members involved. Because um, I really want to talk about the multi-printer hub now, but
yeah. Oh,
like
we can. We're about to.
it's critical for that. Here, Al says Sidewinder X2s were the same way with Octoprint until the board pinouts were released, referring to certain features of the printer not being supported. It took me almost 8 months to get my runout sensors working with the Octoprint on the X2s. And I know when we started the betas for the Sidewinder X2s, getting filament out working was one of the really important things that was brought up within weeks of the beta starting. Um,
Yeah, and that's working now on the Sidewinder.
yeah, I believe so. And if it's not, tell us and we'll fix it.
Yeah. Colin Salmon, welcome to the stream. Just found you guys. Yeah, so a lot of people in our community sell their 3D prints. So if you're not on the Discord, yeah, I think you should join that and talk to people because um, there's a lot of experienced people who sell their 3D prints. Might be worth bouncing some questions off of them or us if you've got any ideas.
Oh, we got Thomas back too.
Ooh, Thomas.
The
Oh, we're getting our whole crew back this week.
Summer and the summer gang.
Yeah. We had Tavi on earlier. I don't know if she's still here. Thomas Keith.
And unfortunately, Jack is back.
Unfortunately. Jack.
The biggest critic. Okay,
We like Jack.
yeah, sure. No, of course we do. Jack knows how to break everything new we throw at him.
Yeah, he's good. He's good at breaking stuff, like in
Yeah.
a good way.
I moved the sensor to the motherboard and rewrote the firmware. Works. Okay, so yeah, Sidewinder X2, filament out, is working, and it didn't take 8 months.
Cool.
So
Yeah,
that's
that's how
what
it
you can
works.
expect. Actually, we even offered to a farm that had issues with one of the hubs to like fly someone out to take a look and see what's really going on because we couldn't
Yeah.
troubleshoot it over email. Yeah, I mean the offer to them still stands. I think it would be worthwhile just to send someone there and have them fix it. Because really Quinly should be taking work off of your plate.
Yeah.
We love Jack.
The
We do.
warranty voider.
We do. All right. So yeah, so support is extremely important to us here because I think all of us coming from a hobbyist background know what it's like. Like, I think a lot of people are surprised by the levels of support that they get. And I think part of the reason we try to provide such good support is because we all know what it's like to have bad support when it comes to 3D printing.
Yeah. It's unfortunately too common.
Yeah, it's very unfortunate. So if you have a Quinly kit and have been supported by us, please leave a review in our store because
Oh yes, that's true. People don't know about this. Yeah, our store has like a review thing, if you scroll to the bottom on our store, you can leave reviews on whatever product that you have.
Yeah.
And it really helps us get some reviews on our page.
Yeah.
Because I always look at reviews before I buy stuff. I'm like, what do people have to say about this? And it's like
Yeah.
one of
Does
the
it
most,
work?
yeah, does it work? Is this thing with
Will
more
they
reviews?
help me get it working too?
Yeah.
Okay. We're at our last section here. QuinlyVision and Pro. So this is something we didn't get to last week, but it's a very big topic.
Yeah.
So QuinlyVision,
Oh, we should change the background so we have QuinlyVision stuff going in.
do you have it? Where's
Yeah, it's in Video BG, and then just change it to
Oh,
like
gotcha.
new footage or QV3D.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So we want a cool background when we're talking about this, you know. So it's our automatic failure detection software using AI for 3D printers.
Yes.
We had a claim earlier in the stream, 5-second failure detection. So what does that mean, Mateo? What are we talking about here? 5 seconds.
Well, it is what it says on the tin.
Is it like average 5 seconds or like?
No, it's in order for us to consider the detection acceptable, it should detect it in under 5 seconds of it happening. So right now, some of the other failure detection softwares on the market are they're good for, detecting after a fail happens.
Yeah.
We really want to get QuinlyVision to the point where it will detect as soon as something starts going wrong to prevent a big failure from happening. So yeah, with other stuff out there, it kind of detects when things have gone really wrong. That's usually hours into your print.
Mm-hmm.
A good example would be a thin part that's warping, and as it warps over time, it might result in the nozzle catching on an edge and causing the part to fall down or something.
I think we have a good clip somewhere here with the warping.
Okay, yeah, exactly. Should we become invisible? Okay,
Yeah.
here. So like this is an example. This is a great example. We detect this warping happening on the first layer, which other software wouldn't really detect. And if we were to pause the print here and notify you of some kind of issue, that would prevent it from eventually devolving into this giant mess and giant waste of filament.
Mm-hmm.
So like it's very important to catch fails early and hopefully early enough to the point that they're recoverable as well.
Yeah.
So that's going to be that is one of the big goals of QuinlyVision is
Yeah, like having the print stop before any potential damage can happen to your printer. Like we want to avoid the dreaded nozzle blobs as much as possible. So in the case of warping, if you catch it before it warps off the plate and starts turning into spaghetti, you're not going to get a nozzle blob because it catches it before it turns into a nozzle blob.
And what's important about not just detecting failures, but actually responding to them within the 5 seconds as well. So we have to detect them quickly, and then we have to respond quickly before things get worse.
Yeah.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, that can be something like your nozzle getting damaged or a giant blob forming around your nozzle, or potentially damaging the bed, or just a mess being generated around your printer that you don't want. Like actually that clip of the detach is a good example too, because there's some software out there that can actually cancel this particular print if it knows it's become detached. So we could feed QuinlyVision into that software, cancel that print before this print starts flying around the bed and ruining all the other prints around it. So yeah, so it's important to detect and respond to fails quickly. And now with a manual printer, response is, pretty limited. You can kind of pause the print try to make some adjustments, but really on a manual printer, you're notifying the user, and you're doing some kind of scripted routine that keeps the printer safe.
Yeah, so you do like a nozzle park and notify the person, say, hey, the print's paused, come check the printer out.
Something really cool that you can do with Quinly is because you have this ability to self-reset, you can actually, as Al suggested, QuinlyVision can pause the print and then reset the printer so that you just move on to the next part.
Yeah, so it would just skip whatever's being printed and go to the next thing in the queue.
Yeah. Um,
Or like one thing we were talking about is having an automatic restart. So it'll restart your print once. And if it fails again in the same way, or if it fails again, then you'll skip to the next part. So if it's just like a random failure that might have happened, then that kind of like filter those out. But otherwise, it'll just skip to the next part.
Yeah.
So, and it'll tell you that it's skipped to the next part too. It'll just be like, hey, printed like 8 out of 10 jobs, 2 were skipped. That kind of thing.
Do you want to re-queue them, maybe even?
Yeah. Or like inspect the G code. Or it would say QuinlyVision detected this failure. This is the recommended action on this print. And on this failure, this is the recommended action. Because that's also, I guess, part of QuinlyVision is since we know what kind of fail has happened, we can also recommend what to do in case of each fail. So that's we're going to call it like a print correction wizard. Let us know if that name makes sense. But some sort of guided approach to solving your 3D print problems. Rather than just telling you the name of the problem, it'll also tell you common solutions to that problem.
And one of the really cool things, so with regular QuinlyVision, we're planning on you can do scripted responses to certain types of failures. But when you're combining that with the Quinly automation, you can take that to a whole new level. So you can do something like where Steven suggested, if a print fails, clear it and try to print it again. You could say, clear it, print it again, but at 80% speed.
Right.
And then see whether that one prints better. Or clear it, print it, if there was warping, clear it, print it again, but turn up the nozzle temp by 5 degrees and see if that fails. So it's literally recovering prints for you without you having to do anything. Like imagine in the middle of the night, you get a part detach and the printer has adjusted temps for you, cleared the print bed, and started a new part with these adjusted settings. And then you come downstairs in the morning, and instead of coming downstairs to a disappointment, you're coming downstairs to a slightly failed part and then a good part. And then like, yes, it failed the first time, but you didn't have to do anything about it. You actually have like a good part that completed all by itself.
Yeah. So that reminds me of a cool idea we had this just today was using this QuinlyVision, we can actually run something called auto optimizer. So it would automatically optimize your prints. And so before it was like if your print started failing, it would repeat it slower. The auto optimizer would do the opposite. So if your print printed successfully, it would actually run it the next time at 10% faster.
Yeah.
And then if that printed successfully, it printed 10% faster. It would be an experimental feature, of course. But the idea is it can keep on printing faster and faster until QuinlyVision identifies an issue. Then it would just like go back one and then keep it at that and say, hey, auto optimizer found that your optimal speed is 160% and you just gained 60%.
Yeah, literally you
capacity.
made 60% more money off your prints without having to do anything.
For free, we did all the iterations for you.
Yeah.
And we stopped it when it got too far.
And you can do like a lot of different changes. Like I think if we were to we would bump speed and we would bump temps probably, like nozzle temp.
Yeah, you like probably move them up at the same time.
Yeah.
Speed and temperature.
Yeah, and you literally wouldn't have to touch anything. It would just, you'd say, I want 100 jobs printed, and then Quinly would be like, okay. And also, I will make them print faster.
Yeah, for free.
For free. I will do the testing for you.
Yeah.
So that's like, yeah, that's the level we can get to with QuinlyVision combined with Quinly automation. And I think, yeah, I think that will be pretty mind blowing to a lot of people that run farms or even just run their printer. Like you can iterate some basic print settings without thinking about it, or you don't even have to think about it at all. Kevin saying the video with multiple parts, are you recommending against that due to the greater issues of and problems? Yeah, but we recognize that people using QuinlyVision might be running on a manual printer where it still makes sense to do batches, in which case this becomes really useful. We usually don't recommend people batch on the automated system because, yeah, it's more time slicing and also higher risk of failure, higher cost of failure, um, and also your parts just look better if you print them one at a time.
Yeah, that's the thing that it surprises me a lot is whenever people get Quinly, they still batch their parts.
I know.
Be
So
the
sad.
first thing you do when you get Quinly is like stop batching parts. Just try it out. If you hate it, you can always go back to batching parts, but just try it out. Print them one at a time. Yes, you'll have to cool down your bed after each one, but that like 10-minute interval is really meaningless in the grand scheme of things. If your parts are printing perfectly and reliably every time, an extra 10 minutes per part really doesn't make that much difference considering the value of automation.
You know, Eric did a research paper. He hasn't published it yet, where he
I'm waiting for
found,
it to publish.
I know, he found that, I don't think I can say the numbers, but he found that it was faster to print individual prints on a Quinly than it was to batch prints
Yeah,
over like over a long period of time. Obviously, if your batch is more than 24 hours, that's not the case. But if you're looking at 24-hour batches over the course of a month versus individual prints over the course of a month, then it does make sense again.
Kevin, you understand the zen of Quinly.
Yeah.
It's just the set it and forget it. Let them print one at a time. The automation does its thing. It just works. Let it happen. You know.
I'm yeah, I'm not sure how he got that result. I'm so curious to see how he calculated that because I don't know what he was printing. I think they were like 3 hour parts, and then on Quinly he was doing them one clear, one clear, one clear, and
Right.
on the other printer he was batching them, but it was still um it was slower to batch them.
Yeah. Well, and just think of the
Probably
time that
because of
it
the
takes.
travel moves.
Yeah, I guess the travel moves would be
Because
pretty
it's
much all
almost
of
like
it,
you're
right?
printing
Well, also you don't get to
inside.
optimize per part.
Yeah.
Like if you have one part that you need at a low layer height and one that you need at a thin layer height, then you have to print them all at the same layer height. Um, except Prusa Slicer now has a thing that you can actually slice them at different layer heights, which is pretty cool.
I think
But
you
then
can
it
do
takes a
that in
long time to
Cura.
slice.
You can do that in Cura too, can't you? When
I
with the
think Cura
sequential
still
printing,
locks you into the same layer height.
even with sequential printing,
Ooh, I don't
I don't.
know. I know I just saw a video on I think the teaching tech did it. He had different settings per part, including layer height. I think Cura still locks you into the same layer height per part.
Hmm.
Um, but either way, you're going to spend like 30 minutes fiddling around with settings per part on your batch if you do it in Prusa Slicer like
Yeah,
that. So it still really doesn't make
you
sense.
don't want to do it. It just again those tiny tasks that you have hundreds of in your day that you don't want to have to deal with.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, that's a really cool thing that will be an experimental feature, the auto optimizer. Um, and then for that's with Quinly, but in general, we were talking about job history earlier. QuinlyVision detection stats are going to tie into that. So are certain G codes more prone to certain types of failures? Where in the G code are they failing? Like, is there a common point at which all, like, let's say you have a 20% failure rate on a certain file. Is it always failing at the same point in the file, or is it failing earlier or later? That
Hmm.
kind of stuff is very important because it could tell you if there's a design element that you have to change. Um, are certain printers failing? We talked about that because that would point to a hardware problem.
And actually, the kind of fails that they're having can point to different hardware problems.
Yeah.
So, like, I don't know, say your layer shifts, you're getting a lot of layer shifts. We can say, like, hey, check your gantry for looseness and tighten your belts and, check your accelerations on your y-axis. All these, like, good layer shift advice things. We can just list them all, and so you don't have to Google, why is my print looking like this?
Yeah. Some kind of built-in documentation or links to documentation. I mean, we were talking with Sean about linking people to his parts of his book as well. That
Yeah,
might be interesting.
3D print channel.
Um, yeah, so for QuinlyVision and Pro, everyone who's on Quinly Pro will actually get like spaghetti detection for free, unlimited when it's ready. And then we're planning for all like pro users to be able to whenever we release, so we plan over the next year to roll out the different types of failure detection. Whenever one is fully released, you'll get like a period to try it out and see if it works for you. And we think that nozzle blob is going to be the first one for that.
It's the most important one, really.
It's definitely the most expensive failure.
Yeah.
And what else are we saying? Oh yeah, so because we track stuff based on the printer level as well, if a printer's performance starts sliding, you can do like predictive maintenance. So before something bad really happens, um, Quinly can let you know that um, things are starting to look worse over time.
So you can say maybe if a printer starts showing signs of stringing over time, you could be like, hey, might be time to replace your nozzle or something like that.
Yeah. Um, yeah, and I mean overall it just reduces the amount of time spent on maintenance. Uh, and it also will reduce the amount of time you spend slicing because you'll have a very specific diagnosis for each file if there are issues with it. Oh yeah, do you want to talk about our idea for using QuinlyVision as a filament sensor?
Yeah, so I guess one of the ideas behind QuinlyVision is it's trying to be a whole bunch of sensors at the same time, right? It's a layer shift detector, so other printers have stall guard on their stepper motors to detect layer shifts, but we just use the camera. It's trying to be a filament sensor, so something to tell you your filaments run out because it can tell if nothing is coming out the nozzle. It's also a flow sensor. Some filament sensors have like the rotary encoder to tell you how much material is going through. So we have over and under extrusion detection, so that'll give you the same feedback.
Not to the same resolution.
Not to the same resolution,
Yeah, we
but
should say that.
but it's giving you all of this with just a single camera. You don't
Yes.
need to put your filament sensor on. You don't need to have a flow encoder
You
built
don't need to
in.
make no firmware.
No firmware needed. That's a
Yeah.
good one. And you don't need complicated stepper motor drivers. None of that because it's just one camera. So we're trying to do everything at once,
Mhm.
which is, and it works quite well too, which is cool.
Yeah.
So instead of having a filament sensor and a flow sensor and stepper motor stall detectors on every printer in your
Like,
farm, you just have a webcam.
and just think about how much work that would be to add all of those things to something like an Ender 3.
Yeah,
Like you'd have to gut the main board, gut the electronics, install something custom, make custom firmware, figure out all the wiring. Like it's just so much work. Whereas with this, you would just need a Pi and a camera, um, and it would handle all of that for you. So you don't need that many sensors.
yeah. So if you have a remote, if you want to have a camera and a Pi anyway, then you probably don't need to also get a filament sensor and a flow thing just to monitor your prints because QuinlyVision would detect that anyway. And within 5 seconds. So, you know, you're not really going to be able to get much better than that with a filament sensor anyway.
I'm wondering if we have the footage to show how quick it is at detecting no extrusion? Because that would be the
I think it's in this one.
oh yeah,
Yeah, here we
okay.
go.
This, yeah. Then this is an old version of the model. This is now a couple months old, so it's even better than this. But yeah, it's able to really reliably detect, like it's detecting travel moves. Um, so yeah, that's about as quick as a filament out sensor is going to detect. This is definitely faster than 5 second fail detection. This
Hmm.
is within fractions of a second.
The
Can
hope
it?
is that yes, it can, because it can tell how long it's been. And I guess it would also be depends if it's on like an infill move or an outer wall move, because if it's an outer wall, you might have a small gap. But yeah, it's hard to tell.
I think we'll be able to get to the point. I think you'll have to mount your camera to be in line with the nozzle.
So it would have to be mounted on the x-axis and move up
Yeah,
along with your print.
yeah, but that's very easy to do. Um, I think I personally, I think we can get it to the point where it can function as filament right now.
Hmm.
Just even based off of this. Um,
And that's not to say you can't use it with a filament sensor of your own.
right, that would just be even better.
Yeah. But the point is that this is going to be almost as good as a filament sensor without having to do any of the work involved with getting a filament sensor. You're getting this along with the spaghetti and nozzle blob detection as well.
Um, yeah, so as I mentioned, we recommend right now on the unders we're mounting it to the x-axis, so it's always in line with the nozzle. Um, that way you always get the you can always see the nozzle no matter where it is. Um, and that will just improve the detection rate. So actually that goes back to questions that Henry was asking. How important is lighting for QV? For instance, if there's a sunrise or sunset through a window. So we actually, most of our data is taken with a really bad camera and really bad lighting.
Because
So
that's how we think most of them will be.
yeah, like I know Leah had one at her house that was just in like a dark closet or something with cables in the background, and then that we use that data. We have in our office, we weren't like controlling lighting or anything in particular. um I wonder, I don't have actually, no, I
We don't
don't
have the really old stuff.
I don't
No,
have the super
I
old
deleted
stuff.
that. I didn't think we'd want to show it anymore.
Yeah, but yeah, it's trained to work with like really bad lighting. The thing is that computers can see on a subpixel level. um they can detect if one pixel, like the red component of one pixel is too higher than that of another, but
Yeah.
humans can't. So like you can do image processing to make things like bad lighting situations a lot better than you might think they would be.
Yeah, we don't have the benefit of like being able to apply filters to our vision. So you'll actually see if you play 3D Printle, sometimes it'll detect fails that are in shadows,
Yeah,
even though we can't see it. So it's just the AI has an advantage over us. It's annoying.
it's not annoying. It saves you so much time.
But it doesn't let me get perfect scores in 3D Printle.
That's true. That's the point.
Yeah, we can't get as good as the AI now. It's like our human limitations are really felt now.
Yeah, our eyes don't see good. Um, I mean, the other thing that, yeah, if you actually, I would look into photogrammetry online. Like, um, there's a lot of stuff that we're looking at that was like developed for astronomy, where you usually have really noisy pictures that you have to get the signal out of. A lot of those ideas also apply to machine vision, so that you can give really, really noisy inputs, but the model will still be able to pull something out of that. Um, yeah, and it's not just like an AI model, there's a whole pipeline that goes around it that I think a lot of people don't think about, um, that makes sure that the images it's seeing, like it can actually recognize stuff.
So it's not as simple as taking 2.5 or 2,500 images and throwing them into a program and saying, learn how to detect print fails, just do it.
It's not quite that simple. Yeah.
Isn't that what you do?
I wish. I wish it was that simple. Um, okay. Did we talk about the multi-printer beta? I guess kind of at the beginning.
We said we were going to talk about it, so we should talk about it. Because
Okay.
we haven't shown our what we've done so far.
Oh yeah, this is cool. I'll switch to a different background for this.
So the point is we want to control as many printers as possible from a single hub. And yeah, Mateo's going to show our progress with that so far. This might look strangely familiar yet unfamiliar
Yeah,
to some of you.
it looks like this UI, but there's 3 of them.
How'd that work? How'd you do that?
Well, yeah, so we got 3 printers connected, and we have a group of beta testers now. I think it's 11 people that are testing it on their farms as well. And if you want to participate, I know Kevin's one of the testers. If you want to participate, make sure to join the Discord and let me know. But yeah, so we started this week the multi-printer beta for Raspberry Pi and for the wireless hub that we provide. Yeah, and we've broken it up into 4 phases, and all of these are Quinly Pro features. But the first phase is just 2 printers, and then once everyone's run those 2 printers for 3 days, we're doing not only 3 printers, but 3 different printers if they want. So you could connect a Prusa, or you could connect Ender, Prusa Mini all at the same time. And then these printers have a shared file storage, so you don't have to run around with SD cards. And they also have a shared queue, which is kind of cool. So again, that's like the beginning of the scheduling stuff that we were talking about earlier this stream, where you don't have to worry about scheduling for specific printers. And then yeah, over the phase 2 is 3 printers, 3 different printers. Then phase 3 is 3 or more printers with like they can have different filaments and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And then at that point, we're going to have a big call where everyone just gets on and we'll talk about what the UI should look like. So last stream, if you want to see it, we had a whole bunch of UI examples for Pro, like how we're going to display different printers. We were talking about even like a 3D view of your print farm.
That's what you saw in the thumbnail.
That's what's in the thumbnail. And yeah, so basically turning this into something much more usable.
This isn't a mock-up, by the way. It's a screenshot
No, this is
from our
screenshot.
actual use. Our
Um,
tests that we were doing, was it yesterday? 2 days ago.
it was on Monday.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it was kind of cool getting 3 running, but my goal is 4, and yeah, I hope we get 4. But I think we might get more based off of early results, so it'll be interesting to see.
I don't really know much, but I'm guessing 6.
I hope we get 6.
That's my guess.
That would be really
That's
cool.
what I voted on Discord.
Yeah, and so then after, like, actually this UI was designed in a similar way where we were talking with a bunch of customers and having them give input on the design. But this is like a proper structured beta where after the 3rd phase of software, we're going to basically have a big call and design a wireframe together, decide what features need to go in, and yeah, that's going to be really fun. And then phase 4 is going to be, let's see how many machines we can throw at it, and also we're going to connect live streams to it as well.
How many cameras and printers can we connect?
Yeah, and I think we'll have to get really clever about how we manage the load on the Pis, but yeah, it might be interesting.
Good questions in chat.
Yeah, Kevin says he's looking at 2 on his screen.
We have some beta testers in here.
Yeah, we've got Jack 2. I'm excited.
4 is the limit.
4 is the limit. Depends what you have enabled. I don't know. I think 4 would be good. But
4 without cameras?
well, we got 3 on this Pi that has 1 GB of RAM, and our rocks have 2, and most people are recommended to have 2. So that's why
So
I'm
this is
thinking.
why way back ago when people are like, can I run it on a Raspberry Pi 3? We're like, yeah, but get a Raspberry Pi 4 probably.
Yeah,
This is why.
this is
Because
why.
now you get to run multiple printers off of a Pi.
That's why I think 4 to 6 is possible. Um,
The sky is the limit.
can't share a queue with different types of printers. That is a good point, although we might be looking at ways to help make that easier. Um, but yeah, that will be part of this is how do you manage a queue when you do have G codes that can only go to some of the printers?
You would probably have to have like some sort of G code tagging
Yeah,
at that point.
you could also have a object that is actually 4 different G codes for 4, depending on what printer it gets
Oh, I
assigned.
see.
Yeah.
Interesting.
How about 8 easy threads? I think we'll like explicitly block easy threads.
Too unreliable for Quinly, unfortunately.
I
Also,
don't
do
know,
they have
maybe.
heated beds or not? I don't even know if they do. If they don't have heated beds, like you're not running a Quinly on it. So
Yeah,
sorry.
easy threads.
I'm really sorry.
Can QuinlyVision, Quinly Pro all run together on one device and have multiple camera inputs? That's what we'll be figuring out. I think my suspicion is that I will say that at least 2 printers, um, but I maybe 4. But we'll see. That's the whole point of this beta testing that's going to go on for the next couple weeks.
But also another thing is, since we're kind of compartmentalizing Quinly in such a way, it might end up making sense to, if you do have like a ton of printers, just run them on a higher power computer instead of having like multiple Pis all connected to each other.
Yeah, which actually some people already do, not with Quinly, but with other stuff. They have a big computer that everything plugs into. And the thing is, like, if your, Pi's cost like $150 right now. If you spend maybe like $200 or $300 on a computer, but you can run 10 or more printers off of it, it actually becomes less expensive than having to buy Pis. So that's something we're experimenting with. We actually kind of used a different, um, we deployed different, we containerized Quinly for this, and that lets us run multiple on a single device, and it might even allow us to run it on different devices like a computer or, yeah, who knows, anything that can run Linux basically. You need 2 cameras per printer though for QP and QV to have full reliability, so that could slow things down. It depends how you do it. I won't share yet, but there are ways to, uh, and it has to do with how QuinlyVision works. You don't need very much data for it to work well. But that's all I'll say.
You got me thinking.
Yeah. You can do a lot with very little data if you're careful about what you're looking at. But that's kind of far off. So, oh, he's got 6 Pi 4Bs, 4 GB, and 2 hubs. Okay, I'm
4 gigs
excited.
on the Pi should be
Yeah,
good.
please tell me how many you can run, because on the 4 GB one, it might be, I don't know, it might be like 10.
Yeah. I want to see an 8 gig Pi.
Yeah. Step brings up a good point. The problem with having everything on a single computer is concentration risk. If a computer fails, the farm goes down. Yeah, and that's why there will always be this trade-off of how many Pis should I have versus how many, like how many printers I should put on a Pi. Because you don't want everything to be on a single device, since if that device goes down, your whole farm goes down, which could be really bad.
or you have a backup computer.
Mm-hmm.
That could work.
That would be interesting. When are we doing 4 printers? Let's say 2 are Quinly and others are just regular. That's something we're looking at, actually seriously considering later, is just allowing other printers to connect but be designated as manual printers so that you have one interface for everything. Yeah, exactly.
It could be nice. Because I know a lot of people have like one or two just weirdo printers that they have for whatever reason, and they still want to run them.
Yeah,
But yeah,
they want it to be in the same system because there are a lot of features that in Quinly that are useful still for manual printers too.
One like equals
one like, yeah, okay.
How many likes can we get?
Yeah, if you like this video, you'll be able to connect one more printer to your Pi or hub. So if we get 20 likes, you'll be able to connect 20.
You'll really have to be forced to optimize Quinly to get 20.
How many do we have?
I think we're at
13. Oh, that's easy.
13.
You guys are being easy on us.
Refresh the page just to make sure.
12. It went down by 1. Oh no, it's back at 13.
Someone took away their like and then put it back, I guess.
13, that's easy. You guys have to make it harder. 1 like equals 1 printer on Pi. I did want to say, so Al was saying you can make hardware backups in case your farm goes down. I think something we'll probably offer is to do like to back up your queue and files online, so that if you for some reason need to switch to a different Pi or need to reload the Pi, it will be able to just download that backup and pick up where you left off. What else do we have? Yeah, so if you're interested in testing this, please let me know in Discord. There's a message in our software updates channel that you can react to, and then you'll be added to the beta. I'm very excited for this.
So I guess one thing I wanted to talk about is, we know these days people have been talking about printing really fast on a bed slinger printer. For some reason.
Why have they been talking about that?
I don't know. People just love this number of like 250 millimeters per second. Everyone's like, can you do this on an Ender? Can you do it?
Where's that number coming from?
I don't know, like some
Like
Kickstarter or something.
Crowdfunding campaign.
I think it's like Kickstopper or something like that.
Foot stopper.
Yeah. So I've been doing some tests, and I think we might talk about this more next week. But this guy, old Benchy, it's a 2x size Benchy. I printed this on an Ender 3, 45 minutes faster than the Kickstarter guys did. And you can't tell, but it looks quite good for a really, really fast Benchy. And this is a 2x size Benchy too, because it's really big. Check it out. There's this one, which is a small Benchy. Guess how long this one took? This was a surprise to me. I actually posted a little thing on Discord yesterday, but 20 minutes. 20 minutes for this Benchy. And it's a good Benchy. Like, you know.
It actually looks good.
We have camera limitations here, but you have to trust me. There's pictures on Discord.
You have to follow on Instagram and on Discord to see the full resolution.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think what we're going to be talking about next week is how to do this, how to print super fast, 250 millimeters per second, do a 20-minute Benchy or hour and a half, 2x Benchy on an Ender 3. And Jack says he can do faster. Steph likes the idea of 5x. How do you make an Ender 5 times faster?
5 times faster. Where have we heard that?
So I'll let you know how to do that next week.
Yeah, gonna be an interesting stream.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not even using Clipper. This is using the old 8-bit Ender board.
Yeah, this is on an 8-bit Ender board. Like, imagine how much faster it could be on Clipper.
It would be a lot faster on Clipper. I had to do a couple things to make it work on the 8-bit boards.
Yeah.
But
did you I won't. We'll
No,
save it for next.
we'll save all the secrets for
I'll
next
ask
week.
you after the stream.
Yeah.
Um, that is 5 times faster. 5x faster. Yeah, I don't know why that keeps coming up.
Yeah. It's a bold claim. I mean, 5x is pretty fast.
Could you get an ender to print 5x faster?
I don't know.
Where have we heard that?
The printers look the same. The beds both move.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
So we'll be
Very
talking about that
suspicious.
next stream. Yeah, it's gonna be fun. Because now that you're printing 24/7, it actually makes sense to print as much as humanly possible to get your optimized print time so that you can print as many parts as you can in those 24 hours that you now have per day.
Al's asking, he wonders how fast an X2 could go. Probably a lot faster, I would think.
It's got a big bed though. I don't know. I think there's probably like a sweet spot because I imagine it has the same stepper motor power as an Ender 3 or approximately.
I think they're bigger.
Bigger. Okay, well maybe not. But I think even having like a direct drive extruder on the X2 versus the Bowden on the Ender,
Yeah.
that could limit your X-axis accelerations. I mean, you could still do it. You'd get ringing, probably. You might get a layer shift at super fast accelerations. I know you can get like 150 millimeters per second on like some printers stock.
I think the Sidewinder can.
Yeah.
Yeah, Al prints that quickly. But yeah, it's we'll be comparing some claims. Oh, also we should mention this is not just printed on a regular ender. It's printed on a tilted ender.
Yes.
The y-axis is
With
tilted.
a gravity-assisted y-axis
Yeah.
for maximum layer shifts. But it doesn't do that because we've got, you know, acceleration isn't ridiculously high. But we do match all the print settings that that Kickstarter claims. So
yeah, Jack's saying a regular benchy, he just sliced it for stock ender, was an hour 30. So yeah, this is 5 times faster.
yeah, 20 minutes, hour 30. And actually they posted a video on their Kickstarter of them printing a benchy in 45 minutes. So I'm like, damn, like this was 20?
This was 2x faster.
This was 2x faster than the 5x. This must be 10 times faster.
This must be 10 times.
So
true.
We should actually title the stream "How to Print 10 Times Faster
Than
an Ender on an Ender."
2 times faster than 5 times faster.
Yes. Oh, that's gonna be a fun one.
That's gonna be interesting. So yeah, definitely stay tuned because I'm curious to hear how you got that result. Yeah, that's the end. It was another long stream, a lot of information. Yeah, if you have any questions, maybe post them in chat as we're wrapping up. Otherwise, join the Discord or and we can keep talking there. But yeah, there is a lot of really cool stuff coming down the pipe for Quinly Pro, and especially with QuinlyVision combined with Quinly Pro, it's going to be exciting.
Yeah. So it's been a lot to cover over the past 2 streams. So thanks for sticking around. It's always good to answer you guys' questions because I know you guys have a lot. And I guess we'll keep you updated as we make more progress on Quinly Pro and Multi-Printer Hub.
Yeah, and everything's going to be beta testing, so keep an eye out for that. You'll be able to join the testing and get your hands on it early, and also give your input on it early because, yeah, the earlier you get into the beta, the more influence you'll have over how these features work. And yeah, everyone else will be stuck with your decisions, but it'll work really well for you. So no, it's always really good. Like I still think about when we released a new UI because, and I know this is because we were working so closely with everyone in the community, but I was surprised that usually new UI gets like a lot of bad feedback, but I was surprised by how good it was. And so I hope to continue doing that with the multi-printer hub and with all of these pro features.
Hmm.
Al says, Matt and I have mind melded.
Hmm.
Yeah, I think we are thinking along the same lines for a lot of this stuff. That's why I'm hoping to hear your feedback. Although maybe we'll have the exact same ideas.
We could like predict each other's next word.
Yeah, like the feedback session will not be useful because we both already thought of everything at the same time.
You'll be saying the same sentences at the same time
Yeah.
and being
Oh
unable to
God.
hear each other.
No thanks. No, I don't think that'll happen. I think I was even in the stream he had such good ideas, so I'm excited to hear that. Henry says always worth staying up for.
Yes, thank you for
Yeah, it's always
people
worth
across the pond.
having your questions too. They're always really
Yeah, you have good
yeah,
questions.
really good questions. But yeah, we'll see you all next week with hopefully some more results from the multi-hub beta, and we'll be talking about how to print twice as fast as a printer that prints 5 times faster.
Then an ender. On an ender.
On an ender. Yes.
So yeah,
That's
stay tuned
great.
for that. That's going to be really fun.
Okay. All right. Well, yeah, we'll see you all next week. Make sure to like the video so other people see it. Subscribe if you haven't already, and join the Discord because you'll get some sneak peeks.
All right. Goodbye, everyone.
See you next week.